Biden is my boss. I resigned because as a Jew, I cannot endorse the Gaza disaster. Lily Greenberg, Special Assistant to the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Department of the Interior. The President has weaponized the idea of Jewish safety Thailand to justify brutality in Gaza. I can no longer stand by. Last week, I resigned from the U.S. Department of the Interior, becoming the first politically appointed Jewish government official to publicly resign in protest and to mourning President Biden's endorsement of genocide in Gaza, where more than 35,000 Palestinians are committing genocide. Murdered. This was an extremely difficult decision, but a necessary one, and one that is even more urgent, given that the President of the United States has consistently damaged the idea of Jewish safety, weaponizing my community as a shield to avoid responsibility for his role in this brutality. I worked hard to elect this administration, first as an organizer for Vice President Kamala Harris in the 2019 Democratic primary, then on the Biden-Harris ticket in Arizona general election. I once saw the Biden-Harris administration as a beacon, flashing brightly as a hopeful symbol of democracy in the encroaching darkness. But now, witnessing U.S. complicity in the ongoing massacre of Palestinians in Gaza, I am only reminded that in times of great horror, many people with great power have chosen not to do nothing. Like many Jewish Americans, I come from people who fled Europe and survived violent persecution. My pregnant great-grandmother escaped the carnage by hiding in the belly of a carriage, then crossed the ocean alone, seeking safety in a new land. My legacy is the grave absence of those who should be here today. Entire family lineages, who could not escape the coming show, were extinguished and disappeared in memory. I feel the weight of this history every day. After the nightmare of October 7, I spent many days visiting loved ones and healing the hurt my community suffered. I remember the days that followed, being filled with grief for loved ones missing or taken hostage, and devastation as the list of confirmed dead grew. And I still find myself holding my breath, waiting for Israel's response to the tragedy. In the months since, I have watched Palestinians struggle to survive the indiscriminate bombing that is devastating their homeland, a bombing bought and paid for by the United States. Children live streaming on social media have been forced to act as absent journalists, many of whom have died in the conflict, which has become the deadliest for journalists on record. I have watched countless videos of families fleeing falling bombs, children mourning the loss of their mothers, and refugees now cowering in Rafah. Around the world, over Memorial Day weekend in the U.S., people watched in horror on social media as the IDF dropped 62,000-pound bombs on a displaced persons camp in Rafah, burning tents and people refugees shelter inside. This does not make anyone safer, neither Palestinians nor Jews. I know what it means to fear the rise of anti-Semitism. I am terrified, I feel it every day. But I am certain that the Jewish people would not be better protected by a war effort, endorsed by the United States and waged in the name of Jewish safety, that would further the genocide of the Jewish people. With an entire nation collectively considered our enemies. In fact, subjecting the Jewish people to a relentless campaign of genocide only puts us in greater danger. The safety of Palestinians and Jews is not in opposition. In fact, they are deeply related to each other. President Biden does not realize this. He refused to call for a long-term and permanent ceasefire, an end to Israel's blank check, guarantees the diplomatic release of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners, an end to the siege of Gaza and the efforts to abolish the system of racial discrimination that stretched throughout the Holy Land. That's why, at this moment, my old boss is the person who makes me feel the most insecure as a Jewish American. In this moment, I am comforted by the work of the organizing committee that demands to be heard. I am inspired by the safe communities created by coalitions of Jewish and Palestinian activists working together in this moment, with one voice, including students, union workers, swing state voters, teachers, artists, religious leaders, writers, soldiers and, yes, more than 500 members of our administration. President Biden, who has condemned genocide. Each of these voices has spoken in accordance with my Jewish faith, which teaches me that the virtue of pikuach nefesh means that saving a life is the greatest mitzvah one can do. There are lessons to be learned from our faith and our history, as we see the same dehumanization that happened to my community now spread to others. Every day, I see photos of displaced people in Gaza, and I recall my own family's memories of loved ones killed in the show, which reminds me of the Nakba. The tragedy happened in 1948 when Palestinian society was being destroyed. And an estimated 700,000 Palestinians had to leave their homeland to form modern-day Israel. Show and Nakba mean the same thing in Hebrew and Arabic, disaster. I resigned on Wednesday, May 15, the 76th anniversary of the Nakba, because I could no longer serve at the will of a president who refused to prevent another disaster. Lily Greenberg Call was a special assistant to the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Department of the Interior.